The blue light of the phone screen was the only sun I ever saw. It was a cold, artificial star that burned my retinas late into the night, promising connection but delivering only a hollow ache in the center of my chest. My name is Elara, and until Tuesday I was dead. Not biologically, my heart beat, my lungs inflated, but my spirit had calcified under the crushing weight of a routine that felt more like a slow-motion burial. Wake up, coffee that tasted like burnt dirt. The subway commute, pressed against the sweaty backs of strangers who would not look me in the eye. 8 hours of data entry, turning human lives into spreadsheets. Then home to the empty apartment, where I would doom scroll until my thumb cramped, desperate for a spike of dopamine to prove I was still capable of feeling anything. That Tuesday was no different, until I hit the third step of my apartment building's staircase. I was thinking about a video of a cat I had just watched, feeling a vague, distant envy of the animal's simplicity. Then the air pressure dropped. It was not a subtle shift. It was as if the atmosphere had been sucked out of the world instantly. My ears popped, a painful, wet crack. The peeling beige wallpaper of the stairwell began to liquefy, swirling into impossible geometries, fractals of bruised purple and bile yellow that spun faster and faster until they bled into a uniform, oppressive gray. My knees hit a floor that was no longer wood, but a seamless, cold material that felt like polished bone. I spent the first few minutes heaving dry sobs into the silence. The nausea was profound, a physical rejection of this new reality. When the bile settled, I pushed myself up. I was in a cube. It was perhaps 10 feet by 10 feet, illuminated by a sourceless, milky glow. No doors, no windows, no seams, just gray. "Hello," I croaked. My voice sounded flat, instantly absorbed by the walls. "Is anyone there?" Panic, cold and sharp, began to dissect my rationality. I clawed at the walls. My fingernails scraped against the impenetrable surface, leaving no mark. I paced the perimeter, counting steps, hoping for a glitch, a hidden latch, a dream to wake from. Nothing. The silence was heavy, a physical weight pressing against my eardrums. Time lost its meaning. It could have been an hour or a day before the environment shifted. I had collapsed in the center of the floor, knees pulled to my chest, staring catatonically at the gray, when the wall in front of me dissolved into transparency. I scrambled back, my breath hitching. It was not just a window, it was a revelation of hell. I was suspended in a chamber of incomprehensibly massive proportions, a vast cylindrical silo that plunged down into an abyss of shadows. Lining the walls of this silo were thousands of glowing squares, other cubes, other cages. I saw movement in the cell directly across from mine, hundreds of yards away. A man was pounding his fists against the glass, his mouth open in a silent scream. In another, a woman curled in a fetal ball. We were a hive of captives, a collection of specimens displayed for a viewer I could not see. Then I looked down. Far below, in the center of the silo's infinite drop, something moved. It defied the laws of biology and physics. It was a mass of shifting iridescent vapor and visceral flesh, a chaotic storm of matter that constantly folded in on itself. It was huge titanic, scraping the edges of the silo as it writhed. Limbs formed from the smoke, long, shadowy claws, weeping wings, shapes that hurt my eyes to track, only to dissolve back into the central mass. It was mesmerizing, it was horrifying. It was like watching a star die and be born simultaneously. As I pressed my hand against the cold glass, transfixed by the impossible geometry of the beast, the creature paused in its thrashing. The swirling vapor slowed. I felt a sudden, intense pressure in the base of my skull, like a hook sinking into the soft meat of my brain. And then the monster screamed. It was not a sound, it was a weapon. I collapsed, clutching my head as the noise tore through the glass, through my flesh, and into the marrow of my bones. It sounded like 1,000 tectonic plates grinding together, overlaid with the shrieking of dying stars. It was the sound of absolute, unadulterated agony. I writhed on the floor, my throat raw as I added my own screams to the cacophony, begging for it to stop, begging for death, begging for silence. My vision blurred with red and white static. The pain was absolute. It erased me. Just as I thought my heart would burst from the sheer trauma of the noise, silence slammed back into the cell like a physical blow. I lay gasping, drool pooling on the gray floor, my body trembling with aftershocks. A broken whimper escaped my lips. Why? It was a useless shard of a word. Why me? I managed to lift my head, looking through the glass. The creature was still there, pulsing, and then the air in the silo rippled again. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the pain. my hands flying to cover my bleeding ears. But the scream did not come.
Want to keep the flame ignited without having to wait for the next part? You can find the full, tantalizing tale on our main page. See the link in the description.